Hello, and welcome to some Dodge family history. This is where I present information and research on my ancestors who served in the military during the early 20th century. Today I will be presenting on my great-grandpa Dodge's VA claims file. This presentation will look at the claim for deceased veterans' benefits that his wife, my great-grandma, applied for following his death. My great-grandpa, James Robert Dodge, passed away in Rawlins, Wyoming on December 23, 1949. Following his death, my great-grandma applied for burial and death benefits. The deceased veteran's claim number is the XC claim number on the VA index card and is the same claim number that was used for the veteran's application of benefits. This part of the VA claims file contains forms and applications filed by the surviving spouse or children of the deceased veteran. The forms for a deceased veteran's claim often include application for U.S. flag, a burial allowance, and a pension claim. This form, pictured here, was completed by the VA in Cheyenne after receiving notice of my great-grandpa's death. This form instructs that his claims file be transferred to the Dependents and Beneficiaries Claims Service for continued administration of benefits his family was entitled to receive following his death. The application for a U.S. flag for burial purposes, shown here, is pretty straightforward. This is an application that was submitted by the funeral home and contains the following information: the name of the deceased veteran, their branch of military service, the name of the war the veteran served in, their date of birth, enlistment, and discharge, their service number, their date and place of death, their place of burial, as well as the next of kin. The flag was issued on December 26, 1949, by the postmaster at Rawlins and was made available at his funeral that same day. The other application submitted by the funeral home on the left is the application for burial allowance. The total cost of the funeral for my great-grandpa was $389.85. The funeral home also submitted an itemized invoice of the costs and services of the funeral. The application for burial allowance was filed on January 9, 1950, which is the date that is penciled in on my great-grandpa's VA index card above the claim number, and contains information taken from his death certificate and his discharge record. The form on the right is the award of burial allowance. The funeral home was awarded payment in the amount of $150, with payment being made to the funeral home and notice of the payment being sent to my great-grandma. On April 11, 1950, my great-grandma filed an application for a widow's pension. In order to apply for a pension, she had to complete this 4-page application, as well as provide several pieces of supporting information, including proof of death of the veteran, proof of his military service, proof that she was not presently married to anyone else, proof of income and expenses, and information on their children. The first page lists the name and relationship of the applicant, Alice Laura Dodge, wife of James Robert Dodge, the vital information of the deceased veteran, the service information of the deceased veteran, the date and place of death of the veteran, as well as the manner of death. The manner of death being needed to help determine if his death was directly related to or caused by his military service. My great-grandpa took his own life after years of depression and alcoholism, which was brought on by years of physical pain and poor health. The local newspapers reported that he said he was no good to his wife, even though he had steady employment with the Union Pacific Railroad and had built a house for his family on the south side of Rawlins on Davis Street. He was a good man who provided the best he could for his family. The first page ends with listing the number of marriages for the deceased veteran. My great-grandpa was married only once, to my great-grandma. They were married November 6, 1929 at Fort Collins, Colorado. They were both living in Laramie, Wyoming at the time of their marriage. Page 2 lists my great-grandma's name, her present address, whether she had remarried since the death of the veteran. My great-grandma remained a widow until her death in 1989, and whether the deceased veteran was survived by his parents, which he was not. Page 2 continues by recording information on the widow of the deceased veteran. My great-grandma gives her maiden name, Alice Laura Lemoyne, her date and place of birth, August 29, 1897, at Hannah, Wyoming, and the number of times she was married. My great-grandma was married twice. The second page also asks if any of her other husbands had also served in the military, which her first husband did not. The second page continues by recording details on each of my great-grandma's marriages. Her first marriage was to Charles Grundy. They married November 2, 1920 at Rawlins, Wyoming, and divorced October 14, 1929 at Rawlins. Prior to 1929, My great-grandpa lived and worked in Rawlins, but I don't know if my great-grandparents knew each other in Rawlins during the 20s. Following her divorce from her first husband, my great-grandparents married at Fort Collins, Colorado on November 6, 1929. The second page concludes with information on the children of the deceased veteran. Their children were Robert E. Dodge, born July 8, 1930, and Alfred L. Dodge, born July 5, 1932, both at Laramie, Wyoming. They were both living at home in Rawlins at this time. My great-grandma did not have any children with her first husband. Page 3 of the application asks about each child and whether any of their children were adopted, stepchildren, born out of wedlock, or over 18 and attending school. Alfred was 17 to turn 18 in 1950 and attending high school. Robert, my grandpa, was 19 to turn 20 that year and worked for the Union Pacific Railroad. This page also asks about the applicant's current financial status. My great-grandma stated that she didn't have any expected income for 1950, and that Robert, my grandpa, was paying $40 a month for board, which was something I never knew before. This page also asks if she was receiving or had applied for any other survivor's benefits, insurance benefits, or Social Security survivor's insurance. She stated that she was receiving $29 for Social Security survivor's insurance. The last page of this application asks if any of her children were currently on active duty in the military. They were not at this time. However, Robert, my grandpa, would be drafted in November of 1951 and spent 2 years in the Marines. His brother, Alfred, would be drafted in early 1953 and served 2 years in the Army. A representative from the VFW helped fill out the application for free. My great-grandma then signed and submitted the application. And on the bottom of the application is the XC claim number 497003. Along with the application, there were several supporting documents that needed to be provided as well. These documents, shown here, include the marriage record of my great-grandparents at the top left, the honorable discharge and enlistment record of my great-grandfather. This particular copy shown here was obtained from Chaffee County, Colorado Recorder on April 5, 1930, and recorded in Albany County, Wyoming on April 11, 1930. The top right is a copy of my great-grandpa's death record. The bottom row we have on the left the divorce decree of my great-grandma from her first husband, birth records for each child of my great-grandparents, and on the bottom right is the affidavit of income. This affidavit of income shows that their income for 1949 was $4,200, and that her anticipated income for 1950 was $1,988. Based on all the information she provided, my great-grandma was awarded a monthly pension of $54 a month for being the widow of a veteran, $42 a month for herself, and $12 for her son Alfred attending high school. Alfred had graduated high school in 1952, which then reduced her monthly pension to $42 a month. This certainly was not much income, but it was enough to help her get by. In reviewing the information she provided, I was again surprised to learn that Robert, my grandpa, paid $40 a month for room and board. And it also appears that in addition to attending high school, her younger son Alfred also helped to support my great-grandma by working as well. As mentioned earlier, during the 1950s, both her sons were drafted into military service. Robert, my grandpa, on the left here, was drafted in November of 1951 and served 2 years in the Marines. Alfred, pictured in the middle, was drafted in 1953 and served 2 years in the Army. They each sent home $40 a month to help support my great-grandma. Both were honorably discharged following completion of their military service. And following their military service, both sons moved away, married, and started families of their own. My great-grandma continued to live in Rawlins. She maintained her pension by providing annual statements of her income to the VA. Her pension increased to $50.40 per month by 1956, and by 1959, her pension was $60 a month, which was in addition to her monthly Social Security payments of $33 per month. In 1976, my great-grandma sold her home in Rawlins and moved to Clearfield, Utah. By this time, her VA pension was $97.28 per month, which was in addition to Social Security payments of $72 a month. My great-grandma lived in a small apartment in Clearfield. However, she gave the VA my grandpa's address so her mail and pension checks from the VA wouldn't get lost or misplaced. My great-grandma passed away on April 21st, 1989. When she passed away, her monthly pension was $121 per month, which was in addition to her Social Security, which was $204 per month. The last forms in the claims file are a letter from my grandpa informing the VA of my great-grandma's death and processing forms closing the claims file. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, as well as the other presentations on my great-grandpa's VA claims file. I hope you have found it informative and helpful as to what a VA claims file may contain. I know for me it was interesting to see the period of time that my great-grandpa's VA claims file covers, from his induction in 1918 all the way through my great-grandma's death in 1989. The wealth of information contained in this file gives a greater idea of what his life was like, as well as sheds light on what benefits he and his family received. I hope the day will come when these VA claims files that are in the custody of the National Archives and the Veterans Administration are located, preserved, digitized, or otherwise made available online so that those doing genealogy or military research can access them without the frustration of extended delays or misunderstanding on the part of the VA as to what information is being requested by genealogists and family members of our deceased veterans and their families who filed for benefits. Thank you.